Call the Board of Examiners into session. We've got the Attorney General and Secretary of State. The Governor is absent.
Thank you,
Mr. Controller.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary and Attorney General. We have 6 items on our consent agenda today. We have our minutes from last month of June. Number 2 is from the Idaho Office of Emergency Management, where there's 2 incidents. Item number 3 is from the Department of Administration. This is a recognition of assignment. This is for Idaho Division of Rehab in Coeur d'Alene. Item number 4 is from the Department of Environmental Quality. This is a quarterly request to transfer $9,627,775 be transferred from the general fund to the Department of Environmental Quality General Fund during the first quarter of fiscal year 27. Item number 5 is from the Department of Corrections. This is a request of approval pursuant to the travel policy where they're requesting to change a permanently assigned state vehicle to one of their employees at the Department of Corrections to change the plate number to a regular license plate number. And item number 6 is from the Ada County Sheriff's Office. This is the quarterly request. This is in the amount of $1,371.91 for costs incurred by Ada County for the transportation of prisoners from April through June 2026. And with that, Mr. Secretary, Attorney General, is the consent agenda.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Consent agenda is approved. Mr. Controller.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And we have one item on our informational agenda. This is from the State Insurance Fund, and that concludes our agenda for today.
Move to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned.
None of the neighbors had any notice, and then it makes me actually be concerned about not just this item, but other items that come before this board where we're told that the neighbors are receiving notice, and we see that there's only one person who's bidding on the lease. We then get complaints after the fact that no one knew about it. So I really want to know if somebody could explain to me today why this happened, why people were not getting notice, and how can we be assured in the future that people are getting notice of events like this?
Director Miller, do you want to comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Attorney General. Ever since 2018, we've revamped our leasing procedures to where we're providing, additional notification, additional, transparency when leases are coming up for either renewal or it's a new opportunity. This was actually a gravel pit that had been in use for 30 or 40 years, and it went into default. And so we took a look at that and followed our leasing procedures that were established by the board in 2018. Again, that provides even more notification and transparency. And we took a look at whether or not we want to use the bond assurance fund to reclaim the site. But knowing that there was still a lot of material in that existing gravel pit, we opted to, since the prior lease went into default, that we would re-auction that lease. And we had several bidders come to the table. There was a $400,000 upbid, a premium bid for this particular lease. And we did provide notification to the adjoining neighbors. There was a mailer that was sent out. Trying to remember, there was 10 or 12, I think, adjoining neighbors that received the notification. And I believe our McCall office got a couple of calls regarding some questions about the pit. I think what I was told was the questions were along the lines of, is this business as usual? And the answer was yes, since that pit had been in operation for quite some time. And so we did provide the notifications. We followed our leasing procedures, and there's value in that pit. And we were very clear also with the applicants that these lands are subject to a potential land exchange, and they were well aware of that, going in eyes wide open. But given that will take some time as we continue to go down that path of this potential land exchange, we figured it's better to release the pit, get the value out of those minerals for the endowment beneficiaries, and then certainly the applicant would then reclaim the site to the desired state. So we did follow our process. I can understand wanting to have a little more time to discuss this, and kicking this to next month. So.
Well, I think, I'll echo a little bit Attorney General's concerns, and I think the governor shares some of the same concerns. I think the broader issue is just communication and information. It's not the substance of this particular lease. I think, at least from where I'm at and for the rest of the board members, my request is not to convey anything regarding the actual substance of this issue. I think this is just to bring it up at a future date where we can have further discussion and more information. But I think there is a broader sense of communication among the community and specifically the neighbors, and then even communication in among us and being able to respond to questions that come up. So I think at this point, unless there's any objection, we'll remove this item from the agenda. Is there any objection? All right, the agenda has been amended.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Secretary, if I could just weigh in on the communication piece. I would ask that whether it's us directly or through those that staff us, I think having some agreed upon guidelines on what communication is or public notice. I think there's varying degrees of understanding of what that is and what that looks like. And so I think to help our director and his team, it makes sense to me that we decide what that is. What does that look like? And then there is a clear guideline to follow, and then there's not a misunderstanding or maybe just a different definition in others' minds on, what communication looks like.
Thank you, Superintendent. And I guess just to echo, I think this seems to be a reoccurring theme, just so Director Miller, and I think for the department, just there seems to be a disconnect between how at least we're feeling related to communication and obviously what you just conveyed in terms of, and that's not specific to this one item. And so I think as we look towards future agendas, I think there's an opportunity, and I'll give an example of something that's not on today's agenda, but it's just a follow-up. You guys did the town halls regarding the exchange, which I think was a good thing, and glad that it was done, but just a follow-up, so closing the loop for us in terms of where those are, so maybe that's something we can discuss at a future agenda as well. All right.
Mr. Chair. And there might be some members of the community here, and I'm not asking them to testify right now, but if they feel comfortable, they might want to talk about what they did get or didn't get. And, I for one, I'm wondering, was this just something like all of us just get something in the mail and just don't even look at it and throw it away? Or was there just nothing sent, or what exactly, did it not go to enough homes? So I just want a little bit more information, because it's not the first time that I get complaints about the lack of notice. And I just want to get to the bottom of it.
And I'll say, for the sake of it, my goal was to remove it from the agenda
Yeah.
before we go too far down the weeds and we make an entire agenda out of this topic. I think for a follow-up, though, I think, whether it's, as Superintendent said, whether it's through staff or also at a future agenda, being able to have, but I echo your concerns. All right, we will go to item 1. Director Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we'll jump into the timber sales update. In June, the Department of Lands, as you can see in your materials, sold 12 endowment timber sales at auction, 7 of which saw competitive bidding, representing a 23% upbid over the combined appraised value. 6 sales did not sell at auction and will be reevaluated and offered for sale at a later date. A sale for the Department of Fish and Game did not sell, but 2 G&A sales did sell for appraised value. So there's a lot in there. Hope you're all tracking with me there. On the endowment side, about 51 million board feet of volume was sold in June for more than $13 million and $255.88 a thousand. And on the G&A side, about 8.5 million board feet of volume was sold for nearly $600,000. On the next table, the department is offering 17 sales and nearly 68 million board feet of volume for auction this month. Total advertised value of these sales is about $8.3 million. On page 2, the current volume under contract is just over 470.5 million board feet and 158 active contracts valued at $156 million. On to the next table, you can see we finished the fiscal year strong at $81 million in timber receipts, with about $11 million in stumpage and interest expected in July. Looking at the next table, the FY26 timber sale program, you can see that as of the end of the fiscal year, 355.3 million board feet of volume was either sold or in process, which puts us at 107% of our fiscal year volume target. And we'll continue to provide updates on the volume in process as we work through the system. As you can see, we've well exceeded our timber, our pole volume target, exceeding 200%. Onto the graphs, you can see that the 99% of the 3-year average for cumulative harvest receipts was achieved this year, and 88% of the 3-year average for volume harvested. As you know, Mr. Chairman and members, the timing of these sales is the factor here. And if you look at those graphs, we did achieve 99% of that 3-year average for cumulative harvest receipts. We're well within that range that we expected to land in by the end of the fiscal year, despite some challenges. But a lot of those sales, if you look at 88% of the fiscal year to date of the 3-year average, 88% of the 3-year average for harvested volume is lower, yet we did well on the harvest receipts. That is largely due to the fact that we harvested, older sales were harvested, and many of those sales were sold at a higher price. So really proud of how we did on the timber sale side this year.
Secretary.
Mr. Controller, question?
Yeah, I have a question. Director, back to the very first thing, it said 6 endowment sales did not sell at auction. Maybe, I don't know if you or Mr. Jim can speak to that, or just some of the reasons, again, behind why 6 sales did not go this month.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Controller, I'll give that a go. And certainly, all of our auctions are sold at oral auction, and our appraisals establish minimum acceptable bids. Our focus certainly is to ensure that we're getting what we can for these particular sales for the endowment beneficiaries. A no bid shouldn't be an automatic concern for us. That simply indicates that the purchasers were not willing to meet that minimum value established by the appraisal. And as you know, there's a lot of different things that come into play here: market conditions, mill demand, logging capacity, hauling, complexity of logging systems needed for a particular sale. And so those are always evaluated. We take a look at the reasons why, talking with purchasers, why they were not interested in bidding on those particular sales, and we evaluate from there. So those particular sales, I don't know the situation of those 6 sales. We can dig into that a little bit more, but this is a fairly common thing, and we ensure that we take a look at all those different factors, meeting with the purchasers, and reevaluating from there as we move forward with a follow-up auction to try to sell those sales.
Director, as you dig into that a little further, I guess I'll be curious just to know how much market conditions are playing a factor in that. This casual conversation with industry partners is obviously they're seeing a dip in the market, and does that then trickle down to us in some of these bids?
Right, certainly, Mr. Chairman. We can dig further into that. I don't know if Jim has anything else to add at this point. I don't think he does.
Say no.
So, yeah, we'll certainly dig into that, but market factors certainly play a role here. And if we move forward, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to continue, on to page 4 there, and this might explain a little bit. You can see the graph is, you see kind of the divergence there between the lumber and our stumpage prices. The inland Northwest lumber and stumpage markets, they do remain stable despite ongoing economic uncertainty. Lumber prices have recovered modestly from recent lows, but remain constrained by high mortgage rates and slower home construction. At the same time, stumpage prices have held firm, supported by steady mill demand, limited log supplies, and continued competition for quality timber sales. Additionally, Canadian production declines have occurred. Consistent state timber offerings and balanced inventories are helping support the market. So our 355 million board feet of volume certainly play a significant role here in helping to support the market. And so the overall outlook for the remainder of the 2026 calendar year is stable, with a modest upside potential if housing activity improves. So we'll continue to kind of track that and make sure we're providing the board with the relevant updates. Any further questions, Mr. Chairman?
Nope, proceed.
Okay, on to attachment B, endowment transactions within our leasing division. This includes leases, permits, and real estate transactions. The department issued a total of 14 instruments in a mix of leases, lease assignments, and land use permits in the month of June. And the department also completed a handful of real estate transactions, including one acquired deed, 2 acquired easements, and 2 granted easements. And on page 2, in leasing revenue, the leasing program ended FY26 with $10.7 million in revenue and nearly $2 million above projections. As mentioned last month, this windfall for leasing is largely due to premium bids in the mineral and geothermal programs. Also performing well were our crop leases, thanks to unexpected continuation of the cafe lease and some overdue rent collected. Energy leases also did well, bringing in 39% over projected revenue due to a premium bid and lease execution fees. And on page 4, the permanent fund deposits for mineral royalties ends on an extremely positive note as well, breaking $4 million for FY26, which is the highest in over 10 years. And I got to say, our leasing and our timber folks, our whole endowment program, did a great job in FY26, and I hope they know how much I appreciate the work that they do every day. As you know, the income from the land is extremely important and makes up a significant portion of the distributions to the endowment beneficiaries. So just want to say job well done to our endowment folks.
And I will echo that, and obviously hitting those numbers is a great achievement, so thank you, and thank you to the team.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if there's no questions, quickly on to attachment C. This is our quarterly land bank aging report, and you can see land bank cash balance, this includes interest, is a little north of $87 million.
Director, I know we're going to talk about using some of the funds later in the agenda, but are there other prospects in terms of using the funds that are on the horizon?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're always looking at those possible land transactions to complete using land bank funds. We have had about 15,000 acres identified in the acquisition pipeline reports, but values remain high. It's been very difficult for us to get some of these to pencil out because of value right now. And when we purchase land, we want to make sure that if we can do this on a large scale, that we want to get the best bang for the buck for the endowment beneficiaries. We continue to look at smaller But again, given the values, the market conditions right now, it's difficult for us to make larger acquisitions. And we're not seeing large timberland owners looking to divest of big holdings right now either. So we continue to take a look at it and hoping in the future that some viable options present themselves, because to the extent we can continue down this track of both balancing out contributions to the permanent fund and purchasing land, I think that's a good strategy that's very consistent with our reinvestment strategy.
Thank you. All right. We'll move to item D.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Land Board members, on to Attachment D, fire season update. I'm going to report out on some more current numbers, given the timing of when Land Board materials are due. During fire season, as you all know, the materials in front of you become outdated rather quickly. So as of July 20th, emergency fire suppression expenditures are estimated to be about $20.7 million. After recovering approximately $5.7 in reimbursable costs, the net obligation to the suppression account is $15 million. These costs include our contracted aircraft costs for the 2026 fire season. On IDL protected lands, the most significant recent incident was the Greer Fire, which started on July 10th near Orofino. The fire burned 353 acres and is now 100% contained and has been returned to the local district. On the table on page 1, you can see there that we've had over 118 starts for about 4,000 acres burned. Actually, I don't think you have the current information there, but what I have in my hand is 118 starts. About 95 of those are human caused, and so a significant uptick in the amount of human caused fires, and that's just given the conditions that we're seeing out there. The things that we talk about all the time, significant growth in our states, more expansion of the WUI, more people recreating, and things happen, right? We really impress upon people to be fire-wise, be smart with fire, really pushing our prevention messaging, but we still get a significant amount of human-caused fires, and that's true for any fire service agency with areas of protection. Looking ahead, fire conditions are expected to become more challenging as we continue on through fire season. Persistent drought continues across much of Idaho, and significant fire potential remains elevated for large portions of northern and southern Idaho through the rest of the month. By August, the entire state is expected to have above normal fire potential with above average temperatures forecast statewide. At this time, the only fire restrictions in Idaho are on U.S. Forest Service lands in the CASA zone of southern Idaho. So significant fires outside of IDL protection. Several fires continue to require significant resources across the state. The Claremont Fire in the Boise Foothills is 6,800 acres, and this is 85% contained. This is currently a cost share fire. Up near Bonner's Ferry, the Upper Smith Fire is 748 acres, and the Turner Fire is 681 acres currently. Both are being managed by a complex incident management team. The Ohio Fire east of Haley is over 2,000 acres and is 10% contained. And the Cow Canyon Fire near the Utah border has reached nearly 4,000 acres and is now 100% contained. You can see on the top table on page 2, total acres burned so far this year is nearly little more than 60,000 acres. And on the lower table, this gives you a current breakdown of the costs associated with the current fire expenditures. Looking at the national situation, nationally fire activity continues to increase as the West continues to move towards the peak of its fire season. The national preparedness level is currently at preparedness level 5. And this is the highest level, meaning firefighting resources are heavily committed across the country, and competition for crews, aircraft, and other resources is increasing. Large fires are burning across the Pacific Northwest, the Great Basin, California, and the Northern Rockies, and we expect resource demand to remain high through the coming weeks. Although Idaho has so far avoided significant fire activity on IDL protected lands this season, we're entering the most critical period of the year. Our focus remains on aggressive initial attack as always, protecting lives and property, and working closely with our local, state, and federal partners to keep fires small whenever possible. So, Mr. Chairman, there's my fire update. Happy to answer any questions.
I guess just first on I was having a conversation with the governor on the Claremont fire. Do you have a sense of what our cost is going to be in response to that fire? I will convey on his behalf, there's some questions regarding the response related to it and what the bill might be that we're gonna have to share in terms of fighting that fire. And also, I'm curious if we know a cause at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I'm looking at Julie, I don't know if we know a cost yet, but we're, certainly at the head of the fire, more work needs to be done and continues to be done. There's a Great Basin CIMT involved. They're handling the fire. We're ensuring that precautions are taken to do the best we can to avoid that fire from spilling over into Roby Creek. And I know Jake and Julia and folks at the local district have been heavily involved in those conversations to ensure that we're getting after it up there on the ridge. The challenge has been we're operating in the UXO area, the unexploded ordnance area of Old Fort Boise, and so there's some challenges navigating some of the suppression tactics in there. But we're working with the team. The contingency lines have been put in there, and we're hoping that we can see full containment in the very near future. As far as costs, again, we don't know yet what those costs are going to be, but it is a cost share fire, and we'll have a better idea in the coming weeks what our portion of that cost is.
Given some of I don't know enough, but given some of the challenges that were faced specific to the Fort Boise area, right? Aren't these areas that have burned numerous times before? So it's not, at least in my lifetime, it feels like that's an area that's burned many, many times. And so I'm just kind of curious how this compares to previous fires.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe in 1996, there was a significant fire in that area. A lot of suppression work and a lot of rehab work was done, and equipment, people were all over that hillside up to the ridge to perform the suppression work as well as the rehab and repair work following the fire. And nothing was found in terms of unexploded ordnances. And so it is our hope that with this new team in place that we can be even more aggressive to cool down the head of the fire up there and ensure that we get the fire out. And but again, the challenge has been the UXO and operating in there. But we've got folks with experience that were on that 1996 fire that are working very closely with the team to push for
It's been a few years since
additional work to
96.
be done up there. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yes, Debbie.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I know there was a lot of discussion around the 4th of July fireworks and so forth. So of the fires that were human started, anything related to fireworks?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, I don't know. So I'm looking at Julia. I don't know if she knows either. Again, the vast majority of our starts, our folks are doing what they always do: aggressive initial attack. They're jumping on them and squashing them quickly, and they're going to continue to operate that way throughout the fire season. All of our fires are investigated, and so we will have those determinations based on what was human caused, what was lightning caused, and of those human caused fires, what exactly was the activity that caused that fire. So I don't know at this point, Madam Chair, but that will shake out in the end once the investigations of all the fires are complete.
Madam Superintendent?
I was going to say, it looks like we've got a head shaking no out in the
No?
audience, so, okay, thank you.
Mr. Controller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to come back to kind of the Claremont director and follow up a little bit more of what Mr. Chairman was asking. Maybe you can help us again understand the difference or help us re-educate on the cost sharing and then fire protection areas of
Right.
why is IDL and then who's leading this? What was our role of jumping on and helping put it out quickly or not putting it out or being part of it if it is our area? Help us understand that, and then why we're having to share costs on this.
So I'll start, and then I'll probably have Julia come up and help out. But the fire started lower down, and it was not on our protection. It was outside the 8th Street area in the Boise foothills. Boise Fire took it for a while and then handed that over to the Wildland Fire Service, which is now the federal agency through the Department of Interior. That includes BLM, Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Indian Affairs, all of the Interior Department agencies that have a fire suppression responsibility. They are now part of the Wildland Fire Service. Their suppression is provided through the Wildland Fire Service now. So Wildland Fire Service took it over. As the fire moved up the ridge, it entered into our protection, which a lot of that ground that is our protection is Forest Service offset acres. So the owner is the U.S. Forest Service, but through our offsets and our master fire agreement, we've agreed to protect that area while the Forest Service protects other areas for us where we don't have adequate resources. So that's ours to protect, as well as on the backside, the private in-holdings with timber on them in the Roby Creek area. So that's why we are involved in this fire, and certainly that's why we want this out as quickly as possible. I'll look to Julia to see if Julia has anything else to add about this particular fire. Not really? Okay. So it certainly gets to be a little complicated when you have these agreements in place and all the agency players involved. Everybody's working well together. I know the Forest Service wants this out pretty quickly as well, and we continue to stay focused on the suppression work up there.
Attorney General, you good? Okay. All right. Anything else, Director?
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the department reports.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Anton, you ready? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Can you hear me? Similar to our colleagues and partners at the Department of Lands, we ended the fiscal year strong. The endowment fund was up 0.7% during the month of June, which left us up 16.6% for the fiscal year. To put that in terms of dollars, that's close to $600 million in investment gains during the fiscal year. So felt pretty good about our year. Financial markets were mixed during June. We've started to see an equity rotation a little bit away from AI and semiconductor stocks into industrials, financials, and healthcare. And so you may ask, why is that? Those companies are still extremely profitable. We're going through this massive investment phase in AI infrastructure, but people are beginning to ask, for the providers of AI, companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, their business model is totally changing. Instead of a high margin sort of software business, they're now investing billions of dollars in capital investment, which will change their return on capital invested. And how will they monetize AI? What are their returns really going to be? So a lot of the Mag 7 stocks haven't performed as well as the others. And in terms of semiconductor stocks, I'm sure you've seen it with Micron, Taiwan Semiconductor. They've been, just shooting north off the charts. Basically, the suppliers to those infrastructure investments have been making a lot of money. But people are beginning to say, how long is this going to last? The projections are maybe a couple years we continue at this high level. I think the investment this year is close to $700 billion. Next year will be close to that. So there's, almost $3 trillion in investment going into AI infrastructure. But the question is, what happens when that slows down or stops? Because valuations are off the chart. So it isn't that those companies aren't profitable today. In fact, they're extremely profitable. But, if you look at the valuations, they assume those levels of growth will continue on into the future. And people are starting to say, well, maybe so, but how long? And what's the present value of those returns? So there's just been a little caution, even though that's the hot area, even though there's really just a whole renaissance of taking place. Where should the valuations be? So that's what's been taking place there. Also during the month, we saw oil prices fall, and that reduced inflation expectations, brought interest rates down a bit. This month, we've seen a reversal of that because the ceasefire is off, as all of you know. The conflict has started again, so oil prices are back up. So it does put the Fed in a challenging place. The new chairman, Kevin Warsh, has focused really on inflation. The question is, how can the Fed really affect a supply-induced inflation? They can increase interest rates to reduce demand, but how can they affect supply? And so it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think the consensus seems to be they'll keep interest rates flat for a while, just kind of see what happens. But it is expensive for consumers at the pump right now. That's a quick overview of what happened during the month. Distributions for 26 and 27 are well secured. So just to refresh the board's memory, we distributed $110 million to beneficiaries in fiscal year 26. The land board approved $117 million in 27. Based on our current methodology, and again, we haven't finished the audit yet, but I anticipate it'll be north of $130 million, maybe around 132. We did hear Superintendent Critchfield's request to look at that methodology, so we do plan to take that up in our August board meeting, but just giving you a sense for even without changing the methodology, we do anticipate some pretty significant growth in distributions next year. So our next meeting is the day before the land board meeting. The audit committee will meet to approve our audit and Department of Land's agreed upon procedures. And we'll discuss the distributions, and then we'll come back to the land board with recommendations for distributions and for transfers from the reserve fund into the permanent fund. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? Don't see any. Oh, yep, sorry, Mr. Controller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the other one, in looking at global equity, I mean, how far we're off from the benchmarks, I guess it'd be a matter of, from your board will be looking at that or reviewing that, or is that any concern that you see in that for discussion? But we're quite a ways off on several time targets there and looking at those.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Controller Wolf, yeah, that's an area that's concerned me. We do have a recommendation we're taking to our board in August to replace one of our global growth managers with another manager. Can't say if they'll approve that, but it's a manager we've wanted to get into for many years. The fund's been closed, and an opportunity opened up for us to take some exposure there. So we have talked to the SIF staff, because we also manage the state insurance fund, and they're supportive of the recommendation. We'll find out what our board wants to do when we meet in August. It won't fix the history, but hopefully we'll make some improvements going forward.
Other questions? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, on the consent agenda, the only item is item 3, which are the draft minutes from the June meeting.
All right,
With that, Mr. Chairman, I move adoption and approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
we got a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, 2 items on the regular agenda. Item 5 is our forest fire improved parcel assessment rate recommendation, and we'll have Julia Lauk handle this one.
Mrs. Lau.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Julia Lauk. I'm the state forester with the Idaho Department of Lands. Before you this morning is the question, shall the land board approve the recommended improved parcel assessment rate of $90 per qualifying parcel? Pursuant to Idaho Code 38-111, the department is authorized to assess and collect fire protection assessments on lands within its protection responsibility. Those revenues are deposited into the Fire Dedicated Fund to support core capabilities necessary to maintain a statewide wildfire program. This includes prevention, detection, initial attack, dispatch operations, equipment replacement, training, fire cache operations, fire cost reconciliation and billing, interagency coordination, and overall operational readiness. The Forest Fire Protection Assessment is comprised of 2 components, a per-acre assessment applied to protected forest land and a surcharge applied to each improved lot or forest. Improved lot or improved lot or parcel. Improved lot or parcel, defined in the Idaho Forestry Act, means forest land upon which a residential structure exists, as determined by the department. In making such determination, the department may consult with the county assessor. As a reminder, Idaho code sets the maximum rate, and land board policy sets the implemented rate. Our current implemented rates are 60 cents per protected acre and $40 per improved lot or parcel. Consistent with state law, Idaho's forested endowment lands pay the same assessment rate as other protected landowners. Preparedness funding is distinct from wildfire suppression funding. While suppression funding is used to pay for the costs of actively fighting wildfires after they occur, the preparedness funding provides the personnel, equipment, training, and infrastructure necessary to rapidly detect and respond to fires. Historically, IDL's fire preparedness program has been funded through an approximately equal split between the Fire Dedicated Fund and General Fund, while federal grants provide supplemental support. In recent years, however, the legislature has approved preparedness budget enhancements. An increased share of these costs have been assigned to the Fire Dedicated Fund rather than supported through additional general fund appropriations. Recognizing these challenges, the department came to the board with a proposed legislative initiative last summer, which was approved for the department to move forward. House Bill 511 passed in the 2026 legislative session and expanded the assessment authority available to the department and the land board by authorizing adjustments to the improved parcel assessment rate. This additional authority raises the maximum rate to $100 per improved lot or parcel. It is IDL's recommendation that the improved parcel assessment rate be moved to $90 per qualifying parcel. This provides a level of dedicated funding necessary to stabilize the dedicated fund and reduce the program's dependence on the fluctuations of general fund appropriations and uncertainty of federal preparedness grant availability. The recommended rate also provides the financial capacity needed to begin implementing some of the priorities identified in the Land Board's approved Fire Strategic Plan. These initial improvements are expected to be included in the department's fiscal year 28 budget request, including investments for firefighter recruitment, enhanced initial attack capability, wildfire detection, and modernization of critical equipment and infrastructure. The department recognizes the importance of continued general fund investment that supports Idaho's wildfire preparedness program, and the proposed Fire Dedicated Fund assessment rate is intended to provide a stable funding source for the core preparedness capabilities. However, the Fire Strategic Plan is built based on balanced funding from the Dedicated Fund, General Fund, and supplemented with federal grant dollars. As general fund support becomes less predictable or represents a smaller share of the overall preparedness program, the pace and scope of implementing the broader staffing, operational, and organizational initiatives identified in the Fire Strategic Plan may be limited. One more thing to note, by applying the increased assessment only to the improved parcels containing structures, the funding responsibility is focused on those properties that most clearly align with the characteristics of the wildland-urban interface. These parcels are typically present the greatest suppression complexity and require additional firefighting resources to respond to incidents, protect lives and property, and suppress the fires. Given the background and discussion presented today, and with the expanded authority for the maximum rate in code, it is the recommendation of the department to modify the land board policy for the landowner fire assessment rate to adjust the surcharge for each improved lot or parcel from $40 to $90. With that, I will stand for questions.
Question, I'm just curious from the discussions leading up to this point, is this sufficient? I mean, given the complexities that you highlighted, are we going to be likely visiting this again in the future just because of the suppression costs related to where we have homes interlaced in the, whether it's forest or other land?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, possibly at some point in the future, But the analysis that was done to identify the $90, we feel like that is sufficient for at least a handful of years. It minimizes or solves the problem of our annual deficiency spending in that account. It also enables us to fund what we're going to be requesting for the fiscal year 28 budget enhancement requests. We have set a goal of maintaining around $5 million in that account to help minimize those rather large one-time budget enhancements we have been asking for. We should be able to, with that balance, absorb some of those without having to ask for additional funding for those one-time expenditures. So we are comfortable with the $90.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So this assessment is regardless of the cost of the improvement or the size of the improvement or anything like that, is that correct?
That is correct.
Has the department looked at whether we should have a tiered approach where, if you have, just a garage, that's all you have on your lot versus somebody who has a multi-million-dollar house? It seems like there should be different tiers. Have you considered that?
Mr. Attorney General, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have discussed at length all of the different options for assessments, and we have looked at states around us and their structure as well. There's a pretty significant difference between a fire service organization that is responsible and collects some kind of a tax or assessment for actually protecting and suppressing structure fires versus what we are doing, which is trying to keep the wildland fire from affecting the structures themselves. So from our perspective, the value of that structure doesn't change the way we fight fire in the wildland urban interface.
Do you have any more?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Julie, I guess from the accounting world, I want to see, the work. I want to see what went into how did you get to $90, I guess, is what my ultimate question is how did we get from 40 to 90? And I'm wanting to see the work or the material or at least line item. How did we get to that?
Isn't it the superintendent of public construction who's supposed to say, show your work?
Yeah, math teacher. But I guess that's what I'm looking for is, how did we land on 90 versus 85 or going up to 100? We're making a significant percentage increase change here.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Controller, members of the board, you are correct. It is a significant change that we haven't seen in many years. There was an analysis that was done. It was not included as an attachment in the official land board documents. It was provided to staff in the briefing last week. And if you would like to have more discussion with some of the staff that actually crunched the numbers, we'd be more than happy to provide that.
Mr. Chairman, follow up. Yep. If I'm understanding to do my own math here on this, there's approximately 68,000 of these units or parcels that have improvements on them.
I believe that is correct. Let me double check. Director, do you happen to have that in front of you?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's accurate. Mr. Controller, yeah, that's the number that sticks in my mind in terms of the number of assessed parcels.
All right.
Controller.
And just one last follow-up to both yours and the Attorney General. From the standpoint of if it's set at $90 and that's approved today, looking at notes and what was provided to staff, does this look like this would cover for 4 to 5 years, budget years is what the intended, setting it at this amount, that's what the intention is to help get us maybe 4 or 5 years out of what we're looking at?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Controller, members of the board, yes, that is correct. We wanted to make sure that we were not going to be coming back to the board in the next year or two to be asking for a rate increase. This should cover us for, I would say 4 to 5 years would be accurate, or maybe more.
Thank you.
I guess a question I have, and this is anecdotal as it comes, looking at the Claremont fire, it seems that part of the response was, while the fire was close to homes in the valley, there was a lot of aerial support. The second the fire got, 100 or 200 yards away, the attack lightened up. I don't know how much of that is because of some of the challenges, or if it's just a reflection of this, where it's like, oh, we're near structures, there's a greater resource allocation because of the risk of property value. Is that, it's just anecdotal, but it feels like it's responsive to the same rate issue.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, yes, even though our primary responsibility for firefighters is the wildland fire, there is always extra effort put towards protecting those values that are going to be impacting the community and private individuals. I don't know the specific tactics and strategies on the Claremont fire. I do know that it did not begin within the area of the unexploded ordinances and moved into that area, and there are definite restrictions when it comes to operating in that area that is not necessarily tied to ground disturbance, but is tied to the heat of the fire, even though there has been fire in that area previously. So if you were watching and you saw what looked like the wildland urban interface and homes being protected, that's good. That's what we all would have intended to do. And then maybe at some point, there weren't enough resources to manage all of the desired tactics and strategies.
Superintendent?
I guess my follow-up, and I'm sorry to ask you to repeat this, but I was also interested in General Labrador's question about the tiers. So what's reflected? You did have a conversation about the tiers. I heard you say you looked at other states. And like I said, you may have said it, but I lost it in there. There's one rate, but there was consideration of tiers or how other states were doing it.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, through discussion internally, we have discussed various options for how to set the rate most appropriately and looked at our neighboring states to see who is doing something similarly and or differently. And we have chosen within the Department of Lands to stick to just the single rate for the residential structure being on the lot.
Mr. Trinchon?
Yeah. Have you talked to people affected by this? How they feel about it? Again, I just don't have enough information with, maybe I'm exaggerating, having just an outdoor bathroom, on a property, you're going to get the same thing as if you have a $5 million cabin on it. And that's the only thing that concerns me about this. And that's where I start thinking about the tiers. Have you, first of all, of the 65,000 people affected, do you have any idea what kinds of properties they have, what kind of structures they have? And number two, have you actually had discussions with them about this increase? Maybe all of them are saying, this is fantastic. You guys are saving our properties and our structures. So can you answer those two questions?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Attorney General, and members of the board, the discussions that we have had regarding this rate increase have not included thus far the actual rate that our analysis projected. So we have engaged stakeholder groups, specifically the Idaho Forest Owners Association, which is typically the smaller forest landowners, and they do typically have some kind of a residential structure on their property. So that's a stakeholder group we spoke with at their annual meeting this spring. We've spoken with industry as well, that is a big group that pays into the per acre assessment as well. But this is the first time that publicly our analysis of the $90 has come out. I did speak with the executive director of the Idaho Forest Owners Association yesterday to give her a heads up that this was what we were presenting and that I would call her to let her know how the outcome of the board meeting went, and they will be putting an article together with some interviews included in their newsletter that comes out next month. But there were no big concerns raised when we presented this concept without the dollar amount at the spring meeting. The maximum of $100 was the conversation because that was what was being set in code by the legislature.
Mr. Secretary?
Superintendent?
For my own understanding, trying to wrap my mind around what the role is. So unlike a local fire department that is charged with saving or protecting a structure, IDL is to keep the fire from getting to the structure? Maybe just a understanding of exactly what is it that someone's paying for? They're not paying to have the protection of their property, but, well, they are, but not the structure.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, members of the board, for this particular assessment, the per acre assessment and the surcharge for the improved lot or parcel, they are paying to protect from wildland fire. So the tactics that we employ as wildland firefighters are to use wildland tactics to prevent the fire from affecting the values at risk, which could be a structure, could be utilities, infrastructure. And as such, we are not trained to suppress the structure fire. So we do everything we can to keep the wildland fire from affecting the structures. And as the area of wildland urban interface has increased, our resources get stretched really thin because our priority for all incidents is the life and safety of firefighters and the public, and then the values at risk, which if you're out in the middle of the forest, those are going to be the natural resource values. If you're closer to the community, even if the dollar value may be higher of the forest itself versus a structure that we may be protecting, we all recognize that to the individuals within our communities, those properties hold the highest value.
Thank you. That helps me understand what the fee is going for, what the role and responsibility of IDL would be in that case.
And I guess I just want to affirm something you said. So for those to be assessed, today is most likely the first instance they've heard of the $90. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that is correct, but they have heard of the $100
The
maximum.
legislative maximum.
Correct.
I will say that gives me a little bit of pause, just, I will say, I'm personally supportive of the effort to get the resources, and I think, as to a certain degree, insurance to help protect these lands, it's important, but hearing all the dialogue and questions, I can appreciate why, I think to the Attorney General's point, like, it's tough for people to give us feedback when they don't know what they're giving us feedback on. All right, board members. Yep, Mr. Controller.
And just to follow up, Mr. Chairman and Julia's, with going from 40 to 90 as recommended, that's a lot more that the department is putting in place over the next 4 to 5 years in your budget request to match up with the strategic fire plan. So it's a much larger increase in even what you're trying to do, resources, expenditure, all these various things that you've listed out here in the memorandum. I guess just to confirm, but it's a lot higher than what you've done in the past because you're not pulling from general fund or other fund sources. So this is to really ramp up then the suppression in the question that the superintendent's asked. Is that a correct statement?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Controller, yes, I believe that is a correct statement, and I will clarify. The rate increase should, based on our calculations, generate about $3.4 million annually once we actually get it implemented across all the counties in the state. And the initial $1.3 million of that is just to cover the deficit spending at which we pull from that dedicated fund on an annual basis right now. The next 1.1 million will cover the fiscal year 28 requests. So there's still room in there to continue implementing components out of the fire strategic plan over the next 5 years per se.
One more, Mr. Chairman, I guess, the timing of when was this become effective, I guess followed to several of our questions. Is there opportunity where the communication and the implementation and operation all meet together here? If you can maybe share that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Controller, I'm not 100% positive I can clearly answer that. All of our fire wardens work with our counties, and the reconciliation of the assessments are all due to be updated in August. So there will be no implementation by this August when the tax rolls have to be updated with the counties. I believe the next time that we update is like December, January-ish, going into the next cycle for the tax bills to come out from the counties, and we would be trying to implement by then.
All right, you've handled the hot seat well. I just want you to know that. Is there a motion?
I guess I have one clarifying question to your last answer. You said that it will not be implemented by August. It would be possibly at the earliest December. So if we were to hold this for 1 month, would you still have time to implement it by December?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Attorney General, yes, we would. The department will be coming in August with our fiscal year 28 budget enhancement requests, which is why we wanted to present this ahead of that, because the rate that is set does impact whether or not we believe we can effectively ask for those budget enhancement requests. But delaying this recommendation or this decision will not impact our ability to implement on the timeline we were already going to implement the actual assessment rate change.
I move to hold this in.
For 1 month.
For 1 month, and then I want to explain why.
Okay, we have a motion to.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second to hold this for 1 additional month. Mr. Attorney General?
I would like to get more information from you, all that data, and maybe my staff already has it and I didn't look at it, but, you know, the data, how you came to this number, because I'm thinking some parcels we may want to charge the full $100. So, and then I just want to know a little bit more about the size of the parcels, size of the improvements, whether a tiered process might actually give you the same, money that you need, but by treating different parcels and improvements differently. So that's kind of the information that I would like to have by next month.
Any other discussion? Mr. Attorney,
Just
or
a-
Mr. Controller, sorry.
I'd just add a comment to maybe a friendly thought to the department is to continue. I know you're looking to do this for your budget purposes and your recommendations. Maybe put that as a placeholder as if we had set it at 90 so you can continue, your finance team can continue with your budget process. But for us to continue to get more information, I appreciate that.
And I'll just add, I support in terms of budget preparation, personally, I support the rate increase because I think the resources are needed to help fight fires. But that said, I also support the motion to delay it to get more information. And I think to the Attorney General's question, I think the superintendent had similar questions, is looking at the alternatives so we have a better perspective, why this is the best option. So, thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
Lodge.
Thank you.
We should vote.
Oh, we should vote. That sounds important.
Yes.
Thank you. John. All right. Well, the motion on the table is to postpone this for 1 additional month, pending additional information. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, and it will be postponed. Thank you again. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the last item on the agenda, item 6. This is the public school acquisition of a general fund parcel presented by Jim Elvin.
Welcome, Mr. Elvin. You're very fortunate to have a very active board today. So I wish you the best.
Bring it.
Rapid.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This item is about transferring ownership of a general fund parcel to the public school endowment. The item is all about improving fund integrity while resolving a longstanding management issue. The Lost Creek parcel is one of a small number of timberland parcels currently owned by the general fund. Many of these general fund ownership assignments date back decades before the 1998 endowment reforms established separate land bank and earnings reserve accounts for each endowment. The parcel was acquired in 1950 for the sum of $1 and other valuable consideration. The challenge with these is that the general fund has no dedicated mechanism to fund ongoing land management within the Trust Lands Division. As a result, necessary activities such as reforestation, hazard abatement, and other stewardship activities have either been subsidized by endowment beneficiaries or required funding from other department budget sources that are general fund in nature. That is not an ideal long-term structure. Transferring this parcel to the public school endowment restores the alignment between ownership, management responsibility, and funding. The parcel is entirely surrounded by existing public school endowment lands, is well suited for active timber management, and can be managed within the endowment's established budgeting and investment framework. At the same time, the general fund will be fully compensated through a land bank transfer at the appraised value of $495,000. This allows the general fund to get a fair market value price while placing the property in the best fund to manage it for long-term returns. This transaction strengthens This transaction strengthens fund integrity, simplifies management, and positions the property to better fulfill its long-term fiduciary purpose. Staff recommends the approval of this transfer, and I stand for any questions.
Any questions from Mr. Elbin? Mr. Controller, I didn't want to let him off too easy.
Yeah, just one fun one. Has JFAC asked if we sell a whole bunch more to help with the budget situation, or just curious of?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Controller, they have not. That being said, we do have about 3 other parcels that we will consider to do the same thing for, to get into the proper ownership for budgeting purpose.
I guess I'll follow.
I guess that's where I was wanting to follow. Is this is one? What's the plan for all these other acres? And that kind of
Hopefully very soon, especially we want to try to use as much of the expiring land bank funds where we have it to get these cleaned up and not have this issue hanging out there.
I appreciate that. I think we have $85 million
Yep.
sitting in.
Yes, sir.
87,
Oh, no,
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you for the correction.
I can use that.
Any other discussion on this item?
No, Mr.
Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the transfer of the Lost Creek General Fund parcel to the public school endowment utilizing land bank funds totaling $495,000.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the transfer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Ms. John?
All right, thank you.
All right.
Chalk that up as a win, Jim.
I heard a challenge, and I wanted to take him up on the challenge, but
As we wrap up, I think I want to just circle back to what we discussed at the beginning. I think, one of the biggest topics, and I don't feel like I think it's across the entire board, is just the public communication on a lot of things. I think that you're hearing that theme, Director, and I think today's start is just to reaffirm that I think our level of engagement, whether it's the land exchange, whether it's obviously the issues that were discussed today, we're interested in a much more thorough dialogue about what those, I will say, I heard you in the sense that you've followed the processes that are built. It's clear at this point we are questioning those processes and their sufficiency. And so I think we need to have a more thorough conversation with staff and with the board in terms of what that public dialogue looks like. Because to the Attorney General's point, this is a reoccurring theme. And so as we wrap up today, I don't want that to get lost in the midst of everything.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I know our staff are doing a good job out there, and I would definitely appreciate the help of Land Board staff on other ideas on additional communication on across the board on all the things that we're doing on the landscape. I think we can definitely do some additional work, but. I will say on the mineral lease, we'll take that up next month. I hope. I know there's a lot of interest in this, and based on the dialogue we had, the mailers that were sent out to the neighbors, the leasing procedures that we're following. I personally didn't hear any pushback on that particular lease. Clearly, the board has heard pushback, and we want to address that. But you don't know what you don't know, and so I would definitely welcome the help of the board and the staff on bolstering additional communication strategies.
One, I think just to echo, the Attorney General made the comment about, you get a piece of mail and maybe you look at it, maybe you don't. There's that component of it. But I think even in this instance, your point, we did hear feedback from some of the neighboring landholders. But even I really do want to commend Julia in terms of handling all the questions, because I think you did a very good job handling a lot of questions. But also this issue is a similar example of us punting a month. We didn't hear feedback about the assessment increases, but to make sure that we feel comfortable that we are advocating for our constituents as we're doing that, I think is an important part. So I think both of these are good examples of us just that, again, that public awareness, and that's not to say there were conversations, but I think it's a reoccurring theme. And so I don't want it to get lost on any particular issue. It's just a broader thing for us to really be working on collectively, because you're seeing it across the entire board. So, all right, thank you. All right, I'll entertain. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned.